Released in 2005, Percy Jackson is one of the most successful book series of all time. Its over 15-year existence has generated a lot of mysteries and secrets, and I think it's finally time to talk about it all. If you know how these videos work, I'll be starting from the tip of the iceberg, where the more common facts are known, and going all the way to the bottom, where the deepest and most secret mysteries lie. So without further ado, welcome to the official Percy Jackson iceberg. Percy Jackson movies. The Percy Jackson series had two movies released by Fox Studios. The Lightning Thief movie released in 2010 and the Sea of Monsters movie released in 2013. Both of these films did fairly well in the box office and were quite popular at its release. However, the movies are also hated by Percy Jackson book fans, as the movies failed to follow the original source material in basically every way possible. Characters were aged up, and key storylines were changed or straight up removed from the books, which in turn created a bland adaptation of Percy Jackson. Overall, these films were forgotten by the general public and are still hated to this very day by many, many people. Percy Jackson Disney Plus TV show. In 2020, a Percy Jackson TV show releasing on Disney Plus was announced. This show is currently still in development, but so far it looks like it's going to be the faithful adaptation its fans have been waiting for. The author of the Percy Jackson books, Rick Riordan, is working on the TV series throughout its entire run. Unlike the movies, which didn't have his involvement, the actors casted for the roles of the main characters are young actors, unlike the movies, and there's overall been a lot of excitement about this show's release. If you'd like to learn more about how this TV show came to be, then you can check out my video about that right here. Riordanverse. The Riordanverse is a term for the Percy Jackson universe. The author Rick Riordan had made multiple side series surrounding other mythologies and side stories that show more adventures from Percy, his friends, and even completely new characters. And all of these are set in the same canon universe. In fact, he is still writing books for the Percy Jackson universe even to today. The Riordanverse currently consists of the Percy Jackson series, the Heroes of Olympus series, the Trials of Apollo series, the Kane Chronicles series, the Magnus Chase series, and all the extra companion books. Disney Hyperion. Disney Hyperion is the book publishing company owned by Disney. Rick Riordan had sent the first Percy Jackson book to many publishing companies. Some had told him that his book was filled with too much action and that the book needed to be slowed down. But the Disney Hyperion publishing studio loved the book for what it was, and so every single book Rick Riordan published was from Disney Hyperion. You can even see the Disney Hyperion logo on his books. Tumblr. This entry is referring to the website Tumblr, where many people share their artworks on the site. Tumblr was a big Kickstarter for many Percy Jackson fan art creations, which had brought so much color and flair to the franchise. Some fan artists are famous and have made their names on Tumblr, which I will get into later in this video. Percy Jackson TikTok. The website TikTok is an online media sharing site, and Percy Jackson skits, cosplays, memes, and reenactments of scenes can be found on the website. It's become something of a life of its own, kinda like the fan art. Percy Jackson TikTok videos are still popular today. Uncle Rick. This is a term that refers to the online nickname of Rick Riordan. People call him this because Brazilian fans on Twitter started referring to him as Tio Rick. They see him as a friendly uncle-type figure, the one who always shows up with awesome gifts and tells crazy stories. And now this term has become the norm when referring to Rick Riordan online. Piper Controversy. This entry refers to the character Piper McLean in the sequel series to Percy Jackson. Piper is a character who was introduced with Native American heritage, or more specifically, Cherokee. People online have expressed their issues with how specific details in her heritage don't add up, like how Piper wears a feather in her hair, even though she shouldn't since it's inaccurate to the Cherokee culture. This issue with Piper's character has been addressed by Rick Riordan in his sequel Percy Jackson series, The Trials of Apollo. Jason X Brick. Shipping is quite a common thing for Percy Jackson fans. This means people like to pair up characters with other characters. Jason X Brick refers to the character in the sequel Percy Jackson series, Jason Grace, being shipped with a brick. Yes, and I mean a literal inanimate brick. The brick is just a regular brick that was thrown at Jason from a crowd of angry campers while he was protecting his girlfriend. The brick was the object that knocked him out and sparked many memes of Jason passing out. I'm honestly not sure where this ship came from. I guess it's just really funny to pair up characters with random inanimate objects, and to be fair, it is. Percy Jackson Musical. In 2017, a musical based off the first Percy Jackson book was released as a small production. This small production eventually gained attention from Percy Jackson fans, where it would go to have a full tour all across America, then eventually make it to Broadway. This show is widely considered to be a very faithful adaptation of the Percy Jackson books, as it is still being performed by schools and small theater plays from all across the world. If you'd like to learn more about this musical, you can check out my video about it here. Kane Chronicles Netflix adaptations. Shortly after the release of the Disney Percy Jackson TV show, Rick Riordan's side story in his Percy Jackson universe, The Kane Chronicles, had been announced to be getting feature films on Netflix. This show hasn't had as much news as the Percy show, but so far the script is being worked on and the author is optimistic that it will do well. Viria. Victoria Ritzel, or better known online as Viria, is one of, if not the most popular Percy Jackson fan artists. She started posting her fan arts in 2012 on Tumblr, remember the site I talked about in the first layer, and she's created so many awesome artworks of scenes from the Percy Jackson books, lots of still images of many beloved characters, and even dabbled into some crossover Percy Jackson art with other famous characters from other franchises. In 2017, Viria would be hired by Rick Riordan to create official Percy Jackson art on Rick Riordan's website, which is still the case today. Haley. This entry refers to Haley Riordan, Rick Riordan's son. Haley was the reason for the story of Percy Jackson existing in the first place. Haley was diagnosed with ADHD and dyslexia, meaning he had a tough time learning in school. Rick Riordan would eventually make up Greek bedtime stories to keep his son interested in the one subject he enjoyed in school, that being Greek mythology. As a result of this, the story Rick Riordan came up with about a young boy around Haley's age named Percy Jackson, who was a hero who had ADHD and dyslexia. Even in the beginning of the first Percy Jackson book, it reads, "To Haley, who heard the story first." Graphic novels. The Percy Jackson series, the sequel Percy Jackson series, and the side series to Percy Jackson all have received official graphic novels. These are like comic books, but they follow the Percy Jackson books. They shorten the original books a bit, but overall they are an awesome piece of visual art, which is really cool. Percy Jackson and Magnus Chase coloring books. This entry is pretty straightforward. Both Percy Jackson and a Percy Jackson side series called Magnus Chase had received official coloring books. These are really awesome pieces of work depicting scenes from the books, and the artworks in the books are surprisingly detailed drawings for a coloring book. These coloring books can be bought at bookstores or online. Riordan presents books. Rick Riordan's books all revolve around some sort of mythology, which got fans of his novels asking if he can do a series on every mythology that exists. Obviously that would be way too difficult for one writer, so Rick Riordan had created his own publishing imprint called Rick Riordan Presents, where writers who have grown up in their cultures and are knowledgeable in said cultures can write Percy Jackson type stories that are completely original and can accurately portray the culture in a fun and whimsical story setting. These Rick Riordan Present books are not connected to the Percy Jackson universe, however there are so many of them to read, and many of them have gone on to win awards. These books can be found in bookstores, or you can buy them online. Half-Blood Amino. This is an online active website that is solely purposed for Percy Jackson content. It currently has over 90,000 members, and the content on here can be anything relating to Percy Jackson, from fan art, photoshops, fanfiction, explainers, rants, discussions, memes, etc, etc. It's a very fun interactive site. I'll put the link for it in the description. Olympiantober. This is an art challenge made by a Percy Jackson fan artist named Picocha. The challenge consists of creating a specific themed Percy Jackson art piece every single day in October. For example, the 3rd day you must draw your favorite Percy Jackson character, or on the 8th day you must create a Percy Jackson meme. You can decide to do an art piece every day, or you can just pick and choose the ones you want to do when the day comes. It's up to you, and the quality of the art doesn't matter. It's just a fun challenge for anyone. I'll leave a link to the challenge in the description if you want to try it. Water's not your type. So in order to make this video spoiler free, I will not give exact details on who the meme is referring to, but basically there's a character in the series who gets revealed to having a crush on Percy. That character then went through a whole arc on giving up on their crush on Percy, and eventually that character told Percy that they were not their type. It was meant as a pretty funny way of breaking the news to Percy, and Percy just responds to that character kinda confused because he had no idea that the character had a crush on him. So now the Percy Jackson fans have memed the "not your type" quote because Percy's reaction to it was just hilarious and iconic. Percy Jackson fan animations. As I stated in the earlier levels, Percy Jackson fans are full of talented art creators, and animation also falls under this category. You can find animations online of scenes from the books, scenes from the Percy Jackson musical, and just overall creative animation projects featuring Percy Jackson characters. There's a lot of these, from GIFs to fully fledged short stories. It's definitely something worth checking out. You can find many of these animations right here on YouTube. 10-year anniversary covers. This entry refers to the 10th year anniversary book covers of the Percy Jackson series, alongside its sequel series and side series. These 3 series have existed for over 10 years and have received a change in design. This is done to keep the books fresh within the bookstores. Personally, I really like the 10th anniversary Percy Jackson covers, since if you line them all up, they create one big image, which is just a really cool design. Percy Jackson fan comic dubs. Fan comics are little art shorts featuring Percy Jackson characters. These comics usually consist of Percy Jackson memes and interactions from Percy Jackson characters. A YouTuber by the name of Hayden Davu has a load of videos on her channel where she and a bunch of voice actors will dub these comics, which adds to the overall enjoyment of the comics. Take a listen.
Atlantis?
That's a myth.
Don't we deal in myths? It's like our whole shtick.
No, I mean it's a made-up myth. Not like an actual true myth.
So this is why Annabeth is the brains of the operations then?
Antonio Caparo. Antonio Caparo is the old official Percy Jackson artist. He created many works featuring Percy Jackson characters and characters from the side series. Many of his works are iconic and were the first ever visuals of the Percy Jackson characters. However, like I mentioned before, Birya is the artist who would eventually become the next official artist for Percy Jackson. Mrs. Pabst. This entry refers to Rick Riordan's grade 8 English teacher. Mrs. Pabst was the teacher who introduced Rick Riordan to mythology, and was the first to encourage him to start publishing his stories. Over time, this beginning with Mrs. Pabst would eventually lead Rick Riordan into writing Percy Jackson, a story based on Greek mythology. The Devil Went Down to Austin and Big Red Tequila. These are two books featured in Rick Riordan's first ever award-winning series called Tres Navar. It holds little significance to Percy Jackson, as Tres Navar came out before he wrote Percy Jackson. However, this series had given him an outlet to enhance his writing abilities before he would eventually publish the first Percy Jackson book. The House Party of Hades. This entry refers to a moment in one of Rick Riordan's interviews where he was talking about his newly released book at the time, The House of Hades, and alongside showing the cover of the book. He put a picture up of a fan recreation of the cover where the fan called it The House Party of Hades, and put a bunch of balloons and party hats all over the cover. This was most likely just done for fun by a fan, and Rick found it funny. Japanese Kane Chronicles covers. The side series to Percy Jackson, The Kane Chronicles, has official Japanese book cover art, and they look awesome. It's like it's from an anime, which makes sense. But yeah, they are just really cool. If you're curious, here's what the Japanese Percy Jackson book cover art looks like. It's also very awesome. The Lightning Thief original cover. Our first entry in this section is about the first true cover to the Lightning Thief book. So the one with Percy holding the sword and staring at New York was never the first idea for the cover art. In fact, it wasn't even the first cover art to be published. Here is the first ever cover art for the Lightning Thief book. Yeah, this cover art was never released, as the author did not like how it looked. I mean, I don't blame him. However, this cover here was the second option, and Rick Riordan went with it, making this cover the true first cover art for the Lightning Thief book that was officially published. To this day, there are very few that own the book with this cover art, as Rick Riordan eventually decided to change it to the iconic cover that many people are more aware of today. Son of Poseidon. Everyone knows that the first Percy Jackson book is titled The Lightning Thief. However, you may not know that the original title for the book was Percy Jackson, Son of Poseidon. The book was named this way for obvious reasons. However, this title did not end up getting published, as one of Rick Riordan's students told him that it gave away the mystery of Percy's godly heritage too quickly, so the book ended up being changed to The Lightning Thief. Still one of the best titles he's ever come up with, in my opinion. The Lightning Thief Illustrated Edition. There is an official illustrated version of the first Percy Jackson book. It's a book that follows the original story, except it's a really big book, with some pages featuring art that depicts scenes within the Percy Jackson novel. It's a great book if you'd like a more visual Percy Jackson experience. You can find this at bookstores or online. Demigods and Monsters. This is a book that's officially published by many authors, including Rick Riordan. It was published in 2008, so it came out before the fourth Percy Jackson book. The book is full of authors talking about the series. They will ask and answer questions like, how are the Greek gods like your middle school principal? Or, would you want to be one of Artemis's hunters? And Rick Riordan answers these questions and gives an explanation for his inspiration for the Percy Jackson series, and his personal perspective of his books. It's a very detailed book, with all the answers you can want about the Percy Jackson series and more. Percy Jackson School Curriculum. On Rick Riordan's official website, you can find his teacher guides in the Parents Resource section. These guides are helpful learning tools for any teacher wanting to use the Percy Jackson books to help their students learn about mythology, or just literature in general. These guides include games, quizzes, and summaries featuring his Percy Jackson books. It honestly is really cool and is full of a lot of great learning resources about the book, so if you're a teacher using the Percy Jackson books to teach, then you got a free lesson plan right on Rick Riordan's website. Percy Jackson Mad Libs. For those who don't know, Mad Libs are word games where the player will try to fill in the blanks for words that are blanked out. So there's an official Percy Jackson Mad Libs book that was published by the book company Barnes & Noble. This Percy Jackson Mad Libs book takes the official writings within the Percy Jackson books and turns it into an official Mad Lib game, where the readers will have to fill in the blanks for certain words. It's meant as a fun, simple game, and it's just funny to know that there's an official Mad Lib book for Percy Jackson. The Curse of Hera. This entry refers to the book called The Curse of Hera. It was published by an author who is not Rick Riordan, and it has so many similarities to the Percy Jackson books that it's obvious where the author got their inspirations for this book. I've never personally read this book, so I can't say if it's bad or not, but it has really low reviews, with people complaining it's too similar to Percy Jackson. Percy Jackson video game. Yes, there was an official Percy Jackson video game released on the Nintendo DS by the gaming company Activision. However, this video game did not follow the books. Instead, it followed the Percy Jackson movies, our very first entry in this iceberg. This video game was created to advertise the first Percy Jackson movie, and it's a single-player, turn-based RPG game. It's actually a decently long video game, with you fighting monsters that featured in the Percy Jackson movie. This game has an average of a 4 out of 5 rating, which is honestly a lot higher than I thought it'd be. I don't know, just the fact that Percy Jackson is an RPG video game made by Activision is such a funny concept to me, and it definitely feels like a perfect final entry in this iceberg analysis. Like I said before, there is still so much that we don't understand about Percy Jackson. The series has existed for over a decade and a half, so there's definitely much more secret things about the franchise that we still have yet to uncover. However, we certainly have uncovered a lot of those secrets today, and it's been really cool as some of these I was not personally aware of. So, I hope you guys had as much fun with this video as I did making it. As always, like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and go check out my channel if you need some more Percy Jackson videos in your life.